Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to my Transformative Nursing in the NICU review. My name is Mary Coughlin. I'm a neonatal nurse practitioner by training and the president and founder of Caring Essentials Collaborative, an organization that is committed to transforming the heart and soul of healthcare around the world, adopting a trauma-informed paradigm. And so in my series, I'm basically walking folks through the second edition of Transformative Nursing. This book came out in 2020, January 2021, sorry. I should know this, right? I read the book. And what I decided I would do to just kind of disseminate this information on a more global level is to take folks through each chapter. And my last recording, I just finished up chapter 4, the science chapter. I broke it into 3 components. And today we're going to start on the soul chapter. And I'm going to also break it into 3 components. The purpose of this section of the book was really to just kind of lay the foundation for the evidence. And I'm just going to look and see what the exact title of this section is that I labeled it. Yeah, the science and soul of trauma-informed care in the NICU. And the soul side opens up with a quote, as many of my sections do, and it's an Albert Einstein quote. "The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift." And I love that quote because I think, particularly as a nurse, but I think this applies for any discipline within healthcare, you know, we bring certainly our knowledge, our empirical knowledge and our technical skills and proficiency in the service that we provide vulnerable babies and families in crisis. But the real magic in the care that we provide really emanates from ourselves and who we are and how we show up and engage with these incredibly fragile individuals. And so it felt really important when we're talking about trauma-informed care. This isn't about doing more stuff to the patient, the family, each other. It's really an invitation to show up as our best selves, always evolving, right? Every day, I evolve into a higher expression of who I've been called to be in this world. And so it felt important, as I said, to talk about this idea of the soul. And how could I not talk about the soul without introducing again the work of Jean Watson. I'm a big junkie, a big, what's it called, groupie of Jean Watson. And I think she really has demonstrated and published exhaustively on the true role of nursing. In the words of Florence Nightingale, as nurses, we are called to support and manage the human experience of disease. The disease is exciting, it's an adrenaline rush, it's sexy, it's technology, it's challenging. But the real essence of what we're called to do is to balance those skills with our essence, with our shared connection, that shared humanity, our seeing ourselves in others, and then using that insight and wisdom to then best serve and ease the suffering and distress of another person. And so I kind of open up with, you know, the work of the science of human caring. But before I do that, I want to share a quote that I included in the chapter with permission from my dear colleague, Jane Solomon. "As a nurse, our purpose is clear. We are hand holders, healers, and heart menders." And that just felt really in line with this idea of trauma-informed care. And it's not, you know, certainly our actions are important, our intentions are important, but in this revised view, this second edition of the book, I also really wanted to convey the importance of the words that we use, that words have power and meaning, and the language nurses use can reduce nursing practice to a series of tasks performed on bodies efficiently or objectively. And is that really what it's all about? Language can perpetuate a sense of powerlessness or empowerment as nurses choose to embody the full breadth of a caring, healing paradigm, balancing science and soul. So that's really what Jean Watson's work was all about. Jean Watson's work was, you know, pivots off of her 10 Caritas processes. And that's how I introduced this chapter, and framed by the science of human caring. I do kind of go into some of my other favorite nurse theorists, because how can you not? And I talk about, of course, Nightingale and Newman and Rogers and then Watson. And for me, these leaders in nursing, these philosophers of nursing science, really set the stage for us to embrace a whole person, unitary transformative worldview of what nursing is, to operationalize that holistic view in our everyday caring encounters. If you remember the work of Newman, she had that theory of health as expanding consciousness, and how even in the throes of difficulty, in the throes of illness and trauma, we are invited at that existential level, at that metaphysical level, to expand our awareness, have a deeper understanding of what our purpose is here on earth. And we learn that through our connections with our engagement in our encounters with others. So I really wanted to set the stage with that. And then I'm just going to now transition into sharing with you what those 10 Caritas processes are all about. And we've actually, in the Trauma-Informed Professional Certificate Program, under the attribute of healing intention, we are guided in our curriculum by these 10 Caritas processes, and invite learners, and we call the learners voyagers, because this is a journey of self-discovery and growth. How does this attribute connect with you? What does it mean for you? And what discoveries and self-discoveries can you expose and reveal to yourself, or be reawakened as you journey through the program? And the first Caritas process is about practicing loving kindness to self and other. And that begins, through a variety of different forms of meditation, right? Practicing loving kindness. You cannot give what you do not have. So, if you believe that you're trying, or you're working on being kind and compassionate to others, you feel that that's a hallmark of the work that you do. In order to evaluate the quality of that, you just look to yourself. How loving and kind am I to myself? I know for myself, I struggle with that, to be honest, and I have to work through my self-talk. I can absolutely easily, on any day of the week, be my own worst enemy. And so when I approach the work that I do with that very critical self-talk, it's really challenging for me to be authentically kind and present and compassionate to others. I'm not saying that I'm a jerk or anything like that, but I'm not bringing my best expression of loving kindness to others until I can really practice that with myself. And what does that look like? Well, it looks like, if you're into meditation, doing meditation. And meditation can be a formal process where you have a sacred space, and you sit down and you light a candle or not, and you actually, practice through sounds or other interventions, prayer beads, whatever you do to just get yourself reconnected. Meditation is also walking out in nature. It can take on lots of different forms, and you know that you're doing it when you feel your heart expand, when you feel that that joy just bursting at the seams within yourself. And so then you cultivate a practice around that, so that you can fan those flames of self-love and kindness, and then manifest that and use that energy to translate into your actions for others, right? That's what practicing loving kindness is. And what's really cool is there have been lots of studies that have actually looked at the practice of loving kindness and its health benefits. One of the benefits that I just actually glanced at here is that it actually preserves telomere length. And if you remember back into the science chapter, premature babies and critically ill babies, and even adults as well, the chronicity of your illness can actually shorten the length of your telomeres. Your telomeres, remember, those caps on the ends of your chromosomes that, over the course of your life, right, your cells are drawing from that that bank of DNA, densely packed DNA to heal, to grow, to live long, right? But when you're exposed to chronic stress and trauma, they actually shorten, they become senescent. You don't have much of a reserve. And so what these guys discovered is that it preserves telomere length. It also is an effective treatment for chronic pain. And there are other health benefits as well. And I have some references in here about the origins of practicing loving kindness, this metta bhavana that originated in the Buddhist tradition and is described as unconditional inclusive love with wisdom. And it's part of these 4 sublime virtues that are practiced in the Buddhist tradition. So giving you a little bit of backdrop, there are little mantras that I've included in here, again, that I've extracted from the research that are a place, where you can kind of start practicing this idea of loving kindness. The second Caritas process that I want to introduce to you as part of these soul practices, if you will, is being authentically present. And we know that the core ingredients of authentic presence begins with self-awareness, courage, transparency, and confidence. So you have to, work on this. All of these are things, it's not like, boing, you've got it, go read a book and you've got it nailed. It's a gradual evolution. You grow and you evolve with your capacity to be authentically present. You have to practice being present. What does it mean? Well, it means learning how to listen. It means learning how to appreciate the now. That expression that the only thing that you have is the now, right? The past is behind you. The future hasn't yet happened. And that's why they call the present as a gift, because it's right here, right before you, right now. So you have to practice that. For me, that took work because I'm always thinking about the next thing to do. And I spend a significant time in the future. And sometimes when I'm not on top of my game, I can kind of dawdle and get delayed in the past, So it's, all of us are on this continuum of, learning to be more in the now, being authentically present, right? Truly feeling that. Let's see, I've got this thing here. Miller and Kutchel define healing presence, which is, facilitated by your authentic presence, healing presence as the condition of being consciously and compassionately in the present moment with another or with others, believing in and affirming their potential for wholeness wherever they are in life. And Jean Watson talks a lot about this. She talks about those caring moments that happen. They're sacred moments. And in order to fully honor those moments, you have to be fully present, genuinely. I mean, I think that's the only way to be present, right? If you're not being authentic, you're not really being present. You're like, oh, I'm trying to be in the now, but it's not a trying thing. You're either in it and letting go and preparing yourself. And there's little strategies that you can do to practice that. And actually in this section, I talk about the work of Joan Halifax, who was a Zen Buddhist teacher and Zen priest. And she did a lot of work with palliative care, end of life nurses, and saw that there was lots of burnout in that group. And so her work, right, as a Zen priest and a Buddhist teacher, knows all the benefits of presence and mindfulness and meditation. So she crafted this, really cool theoretical model, conceptual model rather, and stuff, but this acronym to help folks prepare for that caring moment. And the acronym is GRACE, and the G stands for gather your attention. Recall, that's the R, your intention. The A is attune to the situation, self and other. C, consider your options based on your attunement. And then E, engage and end. And so, for the NICU, how I've shared this with my colleagues is I just say, before you, belly on up to the incubator, pop the doors open or pop the top, do that, just take a deep breath, maybe close your eyes. It might feel like it's taking forever, but it doesn't. It just takes a minute or two. and just, gather your thoughts. Let all of that crazy frenetic energy that's been following you around since you maybe jumped off the train and ran into the locker room, got yourself organized and all the other things you had to do to get there, and then come out onto the floor, get report, and now you're going to lay hands onto this person and you're all feeling frazzled. Let go of that energy. Practice this acronym of grace. Practice being authentically present, and what you'll find, you'll actually, if you can really be present, pay attention to your autonomic nervous system. You might be breathing fast, and then when you take that deep breath and you kind of try and calm yourself, you'll feel your breathing slow down. You'll feel that energy dissolve and dissipate. You'll feel your heart rate come down. You'll feel a sense of calm. And of course, the more you practice it, the better you'll get at it. And then engage with the patient, right? By gently putting your hands on this little person and giving them a verbal greeting. Hey, I'm here. How you doing? Just let them know, acknowledge their personhood through your presence, through your kindness, and through your compassion. The next Caritas process is about fostering spiritual practices. And that's when people can feel really uncomfortable. I mean, I think many of us are still maybe trying to figure out our own spiritual practices. And, it's important to understand that spirituality is not the same as religiosity. I mean, they may intersect, but they may not be. Although the two are not mutually exclusive, spirituality is the essence of being human. It is what gives meaning and purpose to one's life, regardless of faith. And that's from Burkhardt and Nagai Jacobson from 2016. So again, if we're going to be able to serve and recognize the spiritual needs of others, we first need to kind of, get settled with our own. And maybe my spiritual practice is agnostic. Maybe I'm an atheist, but it's recognizing that's where I am, but that doesn't mean that where other people are is good, bad, or indifferent, right? This is where I am, and this is important that others respect where I am. And so I need to honor that and respect where others are. And there was lots of really good research and several interesting articles on the Alamdar article that was specific about the NICU. Attending to the spiritual needs of mothers in the NICU significantly reduced maternal stress levels, and it was a p-value less than 0.5. And yet we don't do this enough. And I think it's because sometimes, we have it in our head that spiritual needs are taboo. We don't talk about that stuff, that's personal, that's your stuff. But when we do that, when we kind of isolate or ostracize folks and we don't get into that, parents, because they're in the throes of trauma, they're in the throes of crisis, they feel even more isolated, more set adrift. When you're in crisis mode, when you're in trauma mode, you can't think, right? You're operating at a subcortical level. You're operating at the level of your brainstem and the limbic structures. You're not reasoning anything. So I can't see, gee, I'm really freaking out right now. Maybe I should go and do my spiritual stuff. You can't get there. And we know this from the work of Bruce Perry and his neurosequential model, where he talks about regulate, relate, and reason. And these three R's actually correspond to the three parts of the brain, right? Regulate the autonomic nervous system. That's the HPA axis. That's your stress stuff. If you can't do anything, if I'm freaking out autonomically, if I'm terrified, then you have to figure out how to calm my nervous system and relate to me. I understand. I had a similar, thing, although you don't talk about yourself, but, maybe you give some examples that help them feel that connection with you before you start saying, there's really no reason for you to be upset because X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. Well, good for you, Nancy Nurse or Dr. Doe, that you're all chill about this, but I'm freaking out. So no matter how you try and reason with me, it's not going to work. And so understanding, again, the biology of this helps us guide them and then say, do you have a spiritual practice? Maybe I can call the chaplain, or maybe we can do something, are there some spiritual practices or rituals and routines that might actually help you navigate this acute state of your crisis? sometimes naming rituals or baptisms or other types of rituals that can help allay some of all of this, the fear and anxiety that these individuals that are experiencing. It's multifactorial. Yes, they're freaking out about the disease and the potential loss of life of their baby, but it's more than that, right? It's this and a little bit of everything else that is now falling apart at the seams. And so we have to have our confidence and our compassion to be able to foster those spiritual practices within ourselves and realize, you know what, when I am at my wit's end, it actually helps me to come in here. And this is what I do. It's first thing in the morning, I sit on my little exercise ball and I have a little altar over there and I have some, spiritual materials that I set my day, and that does help me. But that's not for everyone. And so I wouldn't say, this is what you have to do. I ask you, and you might say, well, actually, I don't have any spiritual practices. And then you say, do you think that would be helpful? How can I help you? Maybe this works for me. I had some prayer beads, and then I gave them to someone who was really having they don't have an organized spiritual practice. And I said, well, I'm just going to share these with you because they helped me. Maybe they'll help you. And now I see this person all the time and they wear those beads. I don't know what they do with them. It doesn't matter. So it's, again, recognizing those metaphysical and spiritual dimensions of our humanity and fostering those practices if they feel appropriate. And in the chapter, I actually, again, from the research, there are different suggestions that have been offered in the literature. Praying with the family, even if it's not your denomination, it doesn't matter. It's your presence, it's your authenticity that is meaningful. Offering a supportive presence, facilitating the practice of the family's religion, assisting the family in exploring expectations of self within the context of the crisis. So. And that might feel really foreign to you. You're like, no, that's not what I do. The chaplain does that. The social worker does that. Well, if you're going to be trauma informed, you need to step up. And in order to do that, I don't want to throw you in cold turkey and just like get over it. I want to respect where you are too. So, this is an invitation for you to examine, well, where's your spirituality at? The next Caritas process is about developing trusting interpersonal caring relationships. And I love that they talk about this. I mean, trustworthiness is a cornerstone of trauma-informed care. It's actually part of the principles and values of a trauma-informed approach. It's about safety, choice, collaboration, empowerment, and trustworthiness. And so it's important for us to understand it. And the 4 pillars of trust are about consistency, communication, competence, and caring. And together, these pillars convey a sense of reliability or reliance on the character, ability, and strength of an individual, a profession, or even an organization. And so at that front line, you represent your organization. And so the actions that you take leave an impression on this family. And we want them to trust us, we want them to feel at least that level of human safety, as a human being, I'm going to do my best to help you, but I need to nurture that. It's not an automatic. I'm very critical and reluctant to fully trust healthcare systems. And it's probably because I've been in it for so long, I can see, the cobwebs and, the skeletons and all that kind of stuff. And so I know from my own personal experience that we need to be mindful of that. And certainly we know now with all of this incredibly rich research now about collective trauma, racial and ethnic disparities, and how that has eroded trust. And we need to work on that, right? Do the due diligence and repair the system, and also then foster and create these trusting interpersonal relationships as maybe that first step in rebuilding trust with healthcare professionals, with the healthcare system at large. The next Caritas process is about forgiveness and showing empathy. And there's really interesting research about the health benefits, which I wasn't aware of, health benefits of practicing forgiveness, that individuals that don't forgive, they hold grudges and stuff like that, they're actually, there's associations with that personality type and chronic illness, chronic pain, and other types of, chronic pain here, that negative emotions such as anger, which is a consequence of not letting go, forgiveness is about letting go, that increases allostatic load on the body and alters modulation of neural inputs, which increases pain perception. And there's one study here, patients who participated at forgiveness intervention actually reported lower levels of sensory pain, believed to be a consequence of emotional and cognitive processes that influence the sensory qualities of perceived pain. And so, and forgiveness is a two-way street, right? So in order to fully forgive others, we have to learn to forgive ourselves. And remember earlier, I talked about some of that harsh self-talk that we do to ourselves, that we're our own worst enemies. And we can begin to cultivate that forgiveness and empathy by practicing loving kindness and learning to forgive ourselves, to be kind to ourselves, to forgive ourselves for these crazy infractions that you would never judge your best friend or any other human as harshly as you judge yourself, and don't and fail to forgive yourself. So it's a good place to start. This Caritas process invites us to acknowledge positive and negative feelings from a non-judgmental perspective. It's easy to accept and or experience positive emotions from ourselves and for others. And truth be told, we look forward to these types of experiences. The challenge begins when we encounter or experience negative emotions. And in these challenging moments, we are invited to transcend our ego. When we accept ourselves and others as we are, imperfect beings doing the very best we can in any given moment, we open our hearts to empathy and compassion. Both are the gateway to forgiveness for self and for others. And in the book, I actually have, at the end of each chapter, I have along with the bib, some resources. And this one was a resource, I had resources for self-compassion. And if you're into or interested in learning more about self-compassion, I refer you to the work of Kristen Neff, N-E-F-F, a researcher who's done lots and lots of really great work in the field of self-compassion, which is where, self-forgiveness begins. The next Caritas process is about use of all ways of knowing. And this dove me back into my nursing research, where back in '78, Carper described 4 fundamental patterns of knowing in nursing. And these were empirical, or the science of nursing, aesthetics, or the art of nursing, personal knowledge, which was about experiential, interpersonal, and intuitive knowing, and then ethics, or the moral dimensions of nursing. So it was empirical, aesthetical, personal, and ethical knowing that Copper had defined as 4 fundamentals for nursing. Jean Watson, of course, came along and built off of that original work to identify all ways of knowing. And her all ways of knowing expanded to include experimental, technical, metaphysical, and spiritual knowing, added to the work of Kappa. And so again, when we think about being knowledgeable, our brain immediately just goes to the science, empirical knowledge, which is wicked cool, wicked sexy, wicked exciting. But there are many ways of knowing that have value. And even when we look at the framework for evidence-informed care, evidence-based care, it's the research, but it's also clinicians' perceptions and values. That's that personal, aesthetic, metaphysical knowing. And then of course the values of the patient. It's all ways of knowing that has to inform us. You don't do something that's hot off the press if it doesn't feel right, if it doesn't feel intuitively or ethically or personally correct in the moment. We need to be open to that, because we've been acculturated into this very rigid biomedical framework, and that's not what being human is about. Biomedical is a component, but a fraction of who we are as human beings, and what we know as human beings, as conscious, expanding conscious beings in the world. So I love that Watson talks about that and really articulates what this means. And in fact, Constantinides in 2019 expanded these ways of knowing by doing exploration on the concept of compassionate knowing grounded by intentional presence. So we're always growing, and it feels to me that nursing is kind of entering this, kind of a second renaissance or a second golden age where we're celebrating and we're really talking more about these human dimensions, these existential dimensions of the work that we do, because we are greater than the sum of our parts. We are greater than the biomedical components, our organs and cellulose. That's really important, but it's not the be all and end all. And if you think, just as I mentioned in the Einstein quote at the beginning, if you think that that's all there is, then you're missing the boat, guys, okay? So the next Caritas process within this initial introductory section of the soul chapter is engaging in transpersonal teaching learning experiences. And I love this. Of course, as an educator, I would definitely love this. And it's really helping us to stay open to that reciprocal relationship in learning encounters. When I look at adult teaching principles or adult learning principles, it's the reciprocity of the encounter, of the engagement. I might know all of this stuff. When I share it with you, it goes through your filters and you synthesize it, and then you share back something else, and I learn from you, and we learn together in this really great relationship. And we talk about this again in the TIP, in the Trauma-Informed Professional Program, with the attribute of role modeling and mentoring. That and when I think about that, I immediately go to the preceptor role, right? And many people operationalize this role differently, but for me, the ideal preceptor embraces this idea of that teaching learning experience, that transpersonal reciprocity, that particularly in mentoring, it's a two-way street. And even, when I'm role modeling, I may be doing this unconsciously. We all role model. We are all doing something and people are watching us. Well, this is how she does it. And it's like, gee whiz, I'm actually doing it wrong. I shouldn't probably be role modeling it this way. And I learn from that experience. But the mentor-mentee relationship, right? It's not just about you do it my way. This is how we do it. This is the way we've been doing it for 30 years. If that's your approach to preceptorship, go take a week, go on a vacation, shake out the dust bunnies, right? And come back open and refreshed, because it's really about learning together. We have so much to learn from these new nurses that are coming in fresh out of school with new insights of new ways of being, introduced and indoctrinated into the nursing profession, new insights. They're not like clouded by, all of the stuff that we've endured and, my badge of honor, I had to, go through it difficult. You're going to do it this way too, because I had to do it this way. That's crazy stuff, right? We need to be reciprocal. We need to share and exchange that. And it becomes a much richer dialogue. And I like how Way and Watson use this concept of a heart-to-heart dialogue. Really, I'm connecting with you, you're connecting with me. I'm going to show you these techniques, and then you're going to maybe give me some feedback on how this is working. Have you ever thought about doing it this way? It's not all the time. It's not, I'm not always going to one up the preceptor, but it's being open to that. This is how I've learned to do it. But what do you think? Let's walk through it. Maybe there is a better way. Let's watch how the patient's responding to this. What can you bring to it from your experiences? And maybe they say, well, gee whiz, this is my first experience in the NICU. That's okay. You're a human being. Maybe you have a fresh perspective that is actually going to shed some light into this arena. I remember kind of when I transitioned from the military nursing into civilian nursing, I had a very brief experience in a NICU as one of my last tours, close to last tours of duty. And then I came into the NICU, and I was doing things the way I'd learned to do them in the service, and it was very different from the way not very different, but it was different, and I was immediately reprimanded that that's not the way we do things. And I wanted to ask questions. I wanted to understand why, because I felt like I understood the rationale, behind this, the science and soul of why we did it this way. And it was like, this is the way we do it here. And to be honest, I don't think it was the best way, and I tried to be open to it. And again, we always have to be open to our own holding on to, the way we feel most comfortable. And sometimes it does feel to stretch, it feels a little bit uncomfortable, but we have to create those experiences so that we can both, we're both going to feel a little bit uncomfortable right now, because we're exploring a new way of doing this that is going to be of the best service to that person that we're serving in that moment. And I like that, and I, again, in doing that, it brings to mind the quote from Maya Angelou, right? People won't remember what you did, they won't remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. And we make people feel all the time, right? We're feeling beings, right? Thinking and feeling beings. And I remember one of our recent graduates shared an experience that she had with a preceptor who really, browbeat her and just made her feel horrible, to the point where she was a new grad too, or she was new in the field. And she really was thinking of leaving just because of the bullying of this one individual. And then that person was no longer available to precept, and she got a new preceptor, and everything shifted. And this other person was open-hearted, open-minded, really, co-learning, reciprocal experiences with this individual that really, it was a 360. Is that the right? Well, 180. And she, committed to staying with nursing, which is what we need, So think about all of these things. These are really important, I think, grounding human development kind of perspectives that set the stage for how we show up to others, to families in crisis, and to the babies that we serve. The next Caritas process is creating a caring, healing environment. And we talk a lot about this, right? We talk a lot about a healing environment in the NICU. The physical environment is really important to us. But a caring, healing environment, although it does include the physical, it's more than that, right? Because sometimes we're just limited by the space that we have, by the facility. This is what we got to deal with right now. So how, with these constraints, how can I create the best experience, an experience that does convey that authentic caring and healing experience for the individual. Williams uncovered 5 themes related to the NICU environment, described as either stressful or helpful to the NICU. And these themes included the quality of communication with the healthcare team. So that's again, that's part of that caring, healing environment. The team's bedside manner. Are you brusque? Do you got one foot out the door? Are you standing while the family is seated, or do you, pull up a chair and sit next to them and create that, sense of presence and being seen? That's also part of that caring, healing environment. Other themes that were identified as feeling alienated from their infant's care. So how do you partner with the family, right, and empower them to facilitate that care? And then support from other NICU parents was also mentioned, and families. And then, of course, the physical environment, right? Just being overwhelmed by the auditory stressors, the equipment, and it has a really scary feel to it. And so how do you create that sense of caring and healing in such what could potentially feel sterile and terrifying milieu? So I think, understanding those parental perspectives is important for us to bridge that, the technological environment, the fear that induces, and the human aspects of it. I know that this can really be scary, but come on over here. Let's have a seat. I'm going to sit down next to you. I'm going to walk you through this stuff, and I'm going to help you, connect and feel at ease, and that you can trust me, and that sort of thing, right? Being authentic. I mean, all of these processes build on each other. It's not like, check, 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 like where our brains go, but it's building, and integrating all of these caring processes to create that truly caring experience, that truly caring milieu that is representative of human caring science. And just two more processes, and then we'll take a break, and I'll pick up where I left off on tomorrow's video. It's the last two are valuing humanity and embracing the miracles in life. And valuing humanity, axiology is the study of values, and Watson introduces this axiology as a starting point to re-examine our moral values that are associated with caring, compassion, love, truth, beauty, and unity in nursing. And these are things that we don't really talk about in our everyday communications. We're very sterile, we're very technologically focused. And I understand, the need for that, but we need to rebalance ourselves, rebalance our communications, because when we're out of balance, that out of balance plays out invisibly in all of our encounters. And we lose our valuing of humanity. And I think about where we are now. Healthcare is imploding. Why? Because it's not built on a solid foundation. The roots of modern healthcare are not grounded in our humanity. And so now when we see all of these expressions of inhumane treatment and inhumanity in healthcare by separating families and loved ones and all this other kind of stuff, and listen, I get infection control and stuff like that. There's got to be a better way, because people are dying from their isolation. They're dying from their fear. They're dying from their anxiety. And bedside clinicians who used to rely on those extra helping hands to do the work are dying as well with overwhelm and overwork and exiting the workforce. And it's because we don't value the humanity, right? The system doesn't value the humanity of those that are here to serve. And that consequently, right, it trickles downstream, right? And it's not an intentional overt thing. It's this super insidious thing where our humanity has just disappeared or is disappearing in healthcare. And we're becoming more tolerant of the inhumanity in healthcare. And so, Watson kind of talks about, and I actually talked about this, and so I'm kind of like pat on my back, that I was thinking through this lens, not to the depth and the majesty and beauty that she shares, but she talks about how, reverentially, listen to that word, reverentially, assisting with basic needs, respects and sustains human dignity. So I think about the diaper change, and it's not just in the NICU. I think about the diaper change of my grandchildren and how it can be very perfunctory. And because they're resilient, it may be a small infraction of disregard, like just flipping it out and throwing another one on because, I'm trying to get really efficient and get them moving and grooving and stuff like that, instead of spending that time with them, talking with them. And that's what, like, for example, activities of daily living. When I think about that, when I think about, repositioning someone, right? Adjusting their postural orientation to minimize pressure sores or just optimize comfort is an opportunity for social engagement. It's an opportunity for me to see their humanity, see their vulnerability, see their fragility, and create that sacred space, that caring moment, and approach it with that level of reverence, as Watson talks about, or tenderness, is important to re-inject, re-infuse humanity into the work that we do. It's not mutually exclusive to be technologically savvy and human at the same time. We can actually bring those two together. And we haven't done that yet consistently and reliably in healthcare. And that, to me, that's what the new healthcare will look like. And I hope you'll join on this mission, right? That's what transforming the heart and soul of healthcare is all about. So valuing humanity, and think about, how have you felt valued in healthcare, maybe in education, on the bus? Do you feel seen as a human being? Do you feel respected, or do you feel like you're just cattle being herded along? Gosh, I mean, think about the airports and think about all of these. We're just getting herded from here to there. It has inundated and pervaded all of our systems. And this is the silent trauma. This is the little trauma that actually is big, because it has that snowball effect on how we engage with others. And then finally, embracing the miracles in life. And when I've talked about this and our TIP learners are going through the program, the beautiful things that they say that, you know, they bear witness to miracles every day, right? In serving these amazing humans that have such tenacity and are able to survive against so many odds. I think about the miracles that I've borne witness to when I was called, you know, for deliveries, and the majesty and beauty of that. That I never want to lose that. I tell the story, and I'll wrap up. But I tell the story of how I used to get to do triage. When I worked at the Brigham. I loved triage because the triage nurse got to go to all the deliveries. Now they were all high risk deliveries, or deliveries that warranted maybe a septic workup or something like that. And I remember this one particular situation where I was on triage and I got called to a delivery, and it was a vaginal delivery. And so you never know when the person's going to come. So they called me a little bit earlier, but maybe to them, they thought things were a little more imminent. But I remember being in the room. It was dark, you know, the room was dark, and the family was around the mother. And I was trying to be, you know, out of the way. So I was up against the warming table, kind of in the corner, not trying to invade their space. I mean, because this is a precious, tender, intimate moment, right? But I couldn't help but get caught up as they're encouraging the mom, you know, push, take a deep breath, you're doing a beautiful job, all this kind of stuff. And I found myself at one point close to the you know, end of the labor going, push, push. I could literally feel the energy of that family community just envelop me. And when that baby was born, I was crying, everyone else was crying, the baby was crying. It was absolutely this, you know, embracing the miracles of life. And they're all around us, right? I mean, every time we look at the face of those babies, it's a miracle. We're looking at the face of God, right? It's an honor and a privilege to do this work. And we have to remind ourselves of that, because if we forget, that's when we start to desensitize and detach from our shared humanity. But back to the story. But I remember, so I, you know, dried off the baby and let him hang out with mom and dad and the family for a little bit. And then I had to bring him upstairs for a septic workup. So I bring the little person up, but my face was still a little bit damp from some of my joy that was sprinkled all over my face. And one of my colleagues made a comment about, oh my gosh, you know, look at her crying again. Who put her on triage? You know, can't you keep it together? It was something to that effect. And I was a little offended, you know, I was a little embarrassed, a little bit offended. And then I thought about it and I thought, you know what? I don't ever want to not feel that. I don't ever want to not be touched by the majesty and the beauty and the awe that surrounds bearing witness to welcoming another brand new human, you know, onto the planet, you know, outside of a uterus, you know. So it was just really special. And I think these are the things that we are invited as we, you know, as you begin this understanding of trauma-informed care and what it is to be trauma-informed. It's really about reconnecting with who you are, with at your essence, who you are, and that will help you make those more authentic and loving, kind, compassionate connections with those that you serve. So thank you so very much. I really appreciate you guys and you're, you know, taking the time to you know, sit with me during these readings. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about quantum physics and consciousness. Some really interesting research that's been emerging, or at least I've been discovering about this, and how this also shapes that soul side, that soul understanding of trauma-informed care. So again, thank you so very much. You guys take care and care well. Mwah. Bye.